Did you have the knife in your hand at that point?
No.
Where was the knife?
It was in my pocket.
Could you get up?
No.
Why not?
There was just so many people.
So you could have, if you chose to, but you did not. You could have left. You could have retreated, right?
Day 3 of jury deliberations resumes this morning in the Preppy Party murder trial for defendant Raul Valle. The jury wanted to listen again to his testimony on Tuesday, so we're wondering, is this going to be a hung jury in the end? Plus, no client list. The DOJ saying that they found no evidence that convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed prominent figures. So is that believable? We'll talk about it. Plus, we're spotlighting the bold and brazen killing of Aliza Sherman. Her divorce lawyer arrested for her mysterious murder earlier this year, and he is due in court this morning. A very close friend of hers joins us live. Also coming up this hour, the family of victim Kaylee Gonsalves returning $85,000 in donations. We're looking ahead to killer Brian Kohberger's sentencing and what we can expect from all of the victims' families. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. We got a great show planned for you, so let's start things off as we always do. Grab that cup of coffee or tea, whatever you like in the morning. If you're across the pond, one of our friends over there, it's lunchtime for you. Grab whatever you're having. It's time for my opening statement. It's about time. My goodness, 10 years and finally complete justice for Crystal Rogers. Seems to me that suspect boyfriend Brooks Houck thought that he could fool the world into thinking that he didn't murder his girlfriend, that she must have just wandered off somewhere after getting that flat tire, right? Wrong. The story never made sense. No woman who gets a flat tire is going to walk away from her car without her phone, her keys, and her purse. And more importantly, no loving mother is going to willingly abandon her precious children. The evidence proved that Crystal Rogers was set up to be murdered and for her body to then disappear. Thank goodness, even without her body being part of the case evidence, those smart and savvy jurors understood exactly what happened to Crystal Rogers. They saw right through Brooks Houck's lies. And they recommended that he and his co-defendant, Joseph Lawson, pay a dear price. The jury recommended that the judge sentence them both to the maximum allowable punishments. For Brooks Houck, it's life. For Joseph Lawson, it's 25 years. I sure hope the judge follows the jury's recommendations. And I hope that 2 other things happen next. First, I hope that somebody is charged now for Tommy Ballard's murder. That's Crystal's dad. And I hope that Crystal's mom, Sherry Ballard, and Crystal's 5 children are able to find some bit of comfort and some peace with the guilty verdicts in her case. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Just keep imagining us traveling together and how much different and fun it would be. Here's hoping for a rogue semi today, big accident, no survivors. Remember those casings. Remember those. No ifs and or buts.
In Iowa, we've got the state's case expected to rest today in the widow's words murder trial for defendant Karina Cooper. Court resumes at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Also in Iowa, we got a brand new trial we're tracking for you. We're calling it the Bloody Suspect murder trial. A man is accused of stabbing a 17-year-old girl to death. This is a bench trial, so the judge is the finder of fact here. The defendant is Nathaniel Bevers McGivney. Now, we're going to be following that one for you later today, as well as the verdict watch we've been on. We're going into day 3 of deliberations in the Preppy Party murder trial for Raul Valle. And that is our top story this morning for you. On Tuesday, the jury listened back to some of the defendant's testimony. They sent another note to the judge asking to hear what he said on both direct and on cross-examination about his best friend, Tyler De Silva, and if he could actually see De Silva being beaten up. Here's a little snippet of what the jury listened to.
What did you see Tyler De Silva doing?
He was also on the ground getting beat on.
Why didn't you just get in that car and leave?
I saw my best friend and somebody that I loved. Nobody was helping him.
The jury went back to continue their deliberations. Then after about 20 minutes, they went home for the day. Still no verdict. Valle is accused of murder and 3 counts of aggravated assault. There were 4 teenagers that he stabbed back in May of 2022. The question is, were the stabbings legal, justifiable, or illegal? Jury's going to be back at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So let's talk about what they may be struggling with. I want to bring in our legal eagles now. It's Wednesday morning. We have with us criminal defense attorneys Kezia Early and Franz Borghardt. Good morning to you both. All right, so what might the jury be stuck on here? Franz Borghardt, would you start us off with your thoughts, please?
I think whether they're saying it out loud or not, you have a juvenile at the time of the crime being tried as an adult. And that is going to bother somebody out of those 12. I think that's number one. Number two is the facts are, in this case at least, the facts in this one could go either way. It's not a clear case of self-defense, but it's not a clear case of not being self-defense. So differing minds may just see this differently. You know, I can see either way on this one. But I think the bigger problem is, and it's the law there. This is the law. He has to be tried as an adult. That is the law there. But he was a juvenile at the time. And I'm telling you, Julie, I think in the back of somebody's mind on that jury, that bothers them.
That's a really good point, Franz. Really good point. Kezia, your thoughts on what may be the problem in that jury room?
I think this whole melee muddies the water a little bit. I also think his background, the prep school, coming from a good background, and if the jury does convict him, will they ruin his future? So all of these things come into play, and I've had several jury trials where the jury is deadlocked early on, and that's a clear sign, a clear indication that this may be a hung jury. Because if you remember yesterday, only after 2 hours of deliberations, they could not reach a verdict. The judge sends them back. And I really believe that this will be a hung jury simply because it's not clear. It wasn't like this was a one-on-one fight and then he just pulled out a knife. This was a group of teenagers. And by the way, this is a rite of passage. Who doesn't fight when you're a teenager? So I just think that in this case, they cannot get over that hump, unfortunately.
Kezia, I agree that the melee makes it confusing. It does. I know that sometimes jurors detest big fights like this. You know, it's hard to sort out who did what, and everybody has a different vantage point. Appreciate that. Let's take a listen to some of what Mr. Valle said on cross-examination.
You were not encircled, right?
But was there anybody behind me?
Right. There's nobody behind you.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Right. So you could have.
If you chose to, but you did not. You could have left. You could have retreated, right?
No.
So you could not have left because there were people around you?
Yes.
So you just said that there was a semicircle of people on the yard. Now you're saying that you were surrounded.
It was like this.
So semicircle, right?
Yeah.
Not a circle. A circle goes like this, right?
Yeah, I wasn't going to turn my back to that many people.
Ooh, it's a pretty good answer, wasn't it? Franz, what do you think? How do you think this young man did on the cross?
He was cross-examined by a very good prosecutor. So the prosecutor wins, but he was also very honest, human. I think he came across as genuine. So, and more to the point, somebody who could be sympathetic. If I'm a juror and I can put myself in his shoes in that situation, then that's enough to get a hung jury. And I could see someone being in that room saying, you know what, if I was in his shoes in that situation, I'm in a neighborhood I maybe don't know. There's cul-de-sacs where there's no clear way of getting out of there. I don't know that I would have done anything different. And that, by the way, is reasonable doubt. And if that's the case, we may have a hung jury.
Yeah, there you go. I want to show you both the lesser included offenses here. So Kezia and Franz, of course, you both know this is what you do every day. You know, you're in criminal court practicing in the trenches, very seasoned attorneys you both are. Looking at it from the defense perspective, Casey, obviously his attorney is well aware of the other possibilities. What would you think would be a defense victory here? Would one of those lessers be a victory, or do you think victory for the defense would be an acquittal?
Well, obviously you want the acquittal, right? But we always ask for the lesser included, because lesser included means a lower penalty, a lower punishment, a lighter jail sentence. So, but I don't even think that he's going to get the lesser included. I really believe that the jury is struggling with the fact that there were multiple people involved, multiple parties. Either way, there was going to be a victim. But I think the holdout juror is still thinking he brought a knife to a fist fight and it just got out of control. But I really don't think that they're going to come to an agreement. If they can't come to an agreement with the murder, not even the manslaughter, hung jury, maybe do it again.
Sure. Franz, this young man rejected 2 plea offers from the state. You've been a prosecutor. They offered him 40 years, and they offered it twice to him, 40 years. Do you think he was right to reject that?
Well, if he doesn't get convicted, yes. And by the way, if it's a hung jury, typically the offer gets better if they even try it again. So, I mean, it's one of those situations, Julie, that, you know, after they come back, if they come back, he's either a super genius or really stupid. There's no middle ground, right? So and look, I understand 40 years, by the way, 40 years is a long time. That's not a life sentence. He would get out of jail at some point, presumably, but I can't blame him for saying, I'm not going away for that long.
Right. I agree, Franz. I agree. And look, and I'm coming from, my world of experience was being a prosecutor. And I keep thinking, okay, what would I do in this situation? And Casey, you have the benefit of having worked in juvenile court as well. And so he's 16 at the time. And Franz, thank you for pointing out that the law says he's got to be tried as an adult. What may be a fair offer for him? I was thinking as a prosecutor, some kind of a hybrid, definitely not as long as 40 years. I think that's just, you're going to flat out reject that. You hear that. But some prison term, some term of incarceration, followed by some term of you know, very, very lengthy probation and intense monitoring for him, so that he's on the hook with the court for most of his, good years of his life. But what do you think, Casey? Is there a number that you think might be fair for this kid?
Well, obviously, you have to look at all of the mitigation, right? But I had a case similar to this. It was a murder charge. My client claimed self-defense, but the offer was 45 years. So he was unfortunately found guilty of the charge, but ultimately his sentence was 20 years. So sometimes you run that risk. The facts are bad. Sometimes the facts are not on your side. But if you believe you have a fighting chance, I always say it's best to go forward. That way you can have an appeal, as opposed to just taking 40 years and you really believe that you were justified. So in this case, if he doesn't have a criminal background, based on the facts and circumstances of this case, I would recommend maybe 10 years of prison, followed by another 10 to 15 years community control, which is a more intense form of probation, and then probation on the back end. And obviously, if he violates those terms and conditions, he'll be back in prison.
I think that's more than reasonable, Casey. Exactly. Because look, the tricky thing about this, as you said with that case, you used as an example that you had, there's a question of legality here. There is a legitimate question of whether he acted lawfully or your client had acted lawfully. And so it's not like we're talking about somebody who outright premeditated a murder, and there's no doubt about it. This is different. And of course, all of our hearts, I know you don't even have to say it, but Franz and Casey, you're both very compassionate with victims, and we want to do that on this show. Jimmy McGrath, that 17-year-old lacrosse player who was a star of the team, sadly lost his life, and our hearts go out to his family. We'll start on that verdict watch at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Franz and Casey, go refill your coffee. Friends at home, do the same, please. We're going to hit a break, and when we come back, we're talking about the big news from the DOJ this week. They're saying no evidence of a client list from convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Do you believe that? Plus, the Ohio divorce attorney accused of killing his own client, Aliza Sherman, is in court today, and Aliza's dear friend joins us live.
I had a female caller asking for help, but she said she's just been attacked, and she was just kept repeating, "Help me, help me, help me."
The medical examiner's office told us today that Sherman was stabbed 11 times on Sunday, right down here in this walkway behind the Galleria.
A lot of people would like to see this case solved, and she deserves justice.
Matriarch of the Adelson family gets arrested.
Terrible.
Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle was the motive for the murder-for-hire plot. Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
Now that the ship is really sinking fast, blood doesn't matter that much.
The Matriarch Mastermind murder trial. Live coverage begins this August on Court TV.
My involvement with them lasted several years. I would try and get out of their view and try and get away from them, but every time I did, they found me. And it became so desperate that I started changing jobs. I changed apartments, cities, states, and even after all that, they found me.
As victims of Jeffrey Epstein continue healing from his actions, the Department of Justice is now saying that Epstein did not maintain a client list. On Monday, the DOJ also announced no more files relating to Epstein's case will be made public. An about-face from what was promised by Attorney General Pam Bondi earlier this year. But after a lengthy review of evidence, the Justice Department determined no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted, noting that much of the material would have been aired publicly had Epstein gone to trial. So the first question we're asking this morning, do you believe that the alleged client list of Jeffrey Epstein's actually doesn't exist? Do you believe that there is no list? Share with us your thoughts right now on social media, and let's welcome in our special guest. She's the co-owner and the host of Justice Served TV. She's also a high-profile trial attorney. Linda Kenny-Bodden is with us. Linda, good morning. Thanks for coming on the program.
Good morning, Julie. It's great to see you again.
Oh, likewise. Okay, so in terms of this first question we're posing, Linda, do you believe that there's no client list?
Well, I think this is a little bit of a bait and switch, Julie, because obviously somebody knew something. It was maintaining some type of list somewhere, because you don't have a Ghislaine Maxwell in jail in federal prison, Jeffrey Epstein's associate, unless there had been a finding of trafficking of women. So there is something somewhere, no matter what you call it. It may not be a list. It may not be a little black book, but there is something. Somebody was keeping track. So do I believe there's nothing? Absolutely not. And I think that if you're talking about the list, you're drawing attention away from the real issues, which is, did Jeffrey Epstein commit suicide or was he killed? And what are the things that are outstanding that the Justice Department is not telling us, has not revealed to anybody, including his brother, Mark Epstein? As you know, I just have to disclose, as you know, my husband, Dr. Michael Bodden, was present at the autopsy of Jeffrey Epstein for Mark Epstein. As you know, it's been all over the news, and his findings have been all over the news. So I just want to get that out there out in the front.
Oh, and appreciate that, Linda. And we wanted to ask you about that. I know you're very transparent about that, and if you don't mind, would love to ask you about that, because many people still do not believe that he died by suicide. And I can remember seeing there was an excellent documentary done, and your husband's work was noted. And if I remember correctly, I remember seeing Dr. Cyril Wecht as well in that same documentary. I know that he was a dear friend and well-respected colleague of your husband's, and they agreed on this, that this was not a suicide. Would you tell us more? Tell us what exactly your husband's findings were in actually observing that autopsy. He was in the room, as I understand it, Linda, on behalf of family member Mark Epstein.
All right, so let's talk about that, but let's talk about that in terms of what hasn't been released. There were 3 fractures, right, of the hyoid bone and 2 bones on the side that are more consistent with a homicidal killing of somebody as opposed to a partial hanging when somebody is seated down on the weight. But what's really important here, Julie, is when the Justice Department releases this video the other day, that video, what people have to understand, is not of Jeffrey Epstein's cell door, all right? There are no videos, the government says, and they've been asked for by the brother since he died, but there are no videos in that tier of that walkway of who had access there because they were, quote, malfunctioning. There's also unnamed people, right? There's unnamed guards, guard number 1, guard number 2. The Justice Department will not reveal who else was on the tier, who else was moved out of the tier. Were there interviews of the other prisoners or inmates or detainees, depending on the status, in the Metropolitan Correction Center in New York City? Is there video of Epstein going to the infirmary? What was done? Did anyone have a handheld video camera? These are all questions that needed to be answered, that still need to be answered. And by focusing on the list, we don't focus on what the Justice Department didn't say to us, what they didn't reveal, and what they said they are not going to reveal to anyone, including a family member. Now, I've handled a lot of detainee suicides in jail. My last one, obviously, as you know, was a prisoner, Aaron Hernandez, who did kill himself. And we knew what we had. We knew what we had in terms of whether guards looked into windows, looked into the keyhole, looked into the cameras. We know in every single case what there should be and what is usually released to the family. Here, it's not. It's simply not. And how does everything malfunction? How does everybody fall asleep? How does everybody not do checks on Jeffrey Epstein? It's mind-boggling, Julie. It's simply mind-boggling. And for the Justice Department to say, well, there's this key locking system, that's bait and switch again, too, because these were actually physical keys that could unlock at that time. So to say now you have a central locking system, again, is just misleading. And I think this is what's causing all of the issues here, that there is no transparency and there should be complete transparency.
Preach, my friend, preach. I love everything that you just said. You're right. That's the biggest problem, that it seems that so much of his death and the case investigation surrounding it has just been shrouded in way too much secrecy. And victims from years ago are still reeling, that there's no justice for them. Ghislaine Maxwell's case seems to be not enough for many people and just unsatisfying, to put it bluntly. With other cases you've had, Linda, and thank you for mentioning your client Aaron Hernandez's case, and others you've had, in your experience, when there is a jail suicide, are there some things that you've typically seen with all of them that may not have been present in this case with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, sure. You obviously have suicidal ideations. You've had a report done. You've seen a psychologist, psychiatrist to have the prison. Are you a risk of suicide? People are normally, like Aaron's case, he was actually hanging completely up. He had put soap on the floor so medical people couldn't get in to follow him. There's all sorts of things. You have the cameras of the actual jail cell, of the door to the jail cell, which you see. The family is told things right off the bat in these cases. You file a preservation motion and you request, and they're willing to talk to the family because generally they know, most of these cases know that unless they've done something really wrong, they have immunity. Here, there's no communication with Mark Epstein on the things that he's asked for. I actually spoke to him last night before I went on the air. It was one of the first times I had spoken to him. I've only have spoken to him one other time, but not about his brother. And we went through a lot of different things, and I asked him specifically these questions. Did you ask for the cameras for the infirmary? Yes. Did you ask for the video? Why was there attempts made to try to save him when he was clearly dead for many, many hours, according to what my husband had said on different shows that you can go and review. Why was this allegedly a partial hanging? Why was there no lividity where there should be lividity? These are things that they normally discuss with the families, and they're open about them. And the shrouding and secrecy and trying to pretend that this release of this video answers these questions, does not do it, and it leads more to what people think is not just a conspiracy, but a cover-up.
Linda, this is such helpful insight you're sharing. Let's go back in time and take a listen back to what was said by the government about Jeffrey Epstein's death.
Epstein was found hanged in his locked cell within the prison's secure special housing unit. The New York City's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner determined that Epstein died by suicide. We determined that MCC New York staff failed to ensure Epstein was assigned a cellmate, as instructed by MCC New York's psychology department following an incident on July 23rd, where Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell with a cloth wrapped around his neck. Had Epstein's cell been searched as required, it would have revealed that Epstein had excess prison blankets, linens, and clothing in his cell.
Linda, we know that you're the legal expert in your household. Your husband's the medical expert, and you both have crossover, and I'm sure it's wonderful being able to talk to each other about these cases. And with your husband's findings, the way I understand it and the way I've heard the late, great Dr. Cyril Wecht explain it as well, is that the hyoid bone being fractured was a telltale sign in this of manual strangulation. Dr. Wecht believed, and it's my understanding your husband, Dr. Baden, believes this as well, that a sheet that we saw there in the photograph, or piece of clothing, whatever it was, would not fracture the hyoid bone. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, it's actually more than that. You're probably better off than some of the FBI people we've seen.
I got the layman's version. Yeah,
there's also two bones on the side here, the thyroid cartilage. So there's 3 fractures there, and also with the ligature mark. The ligature that was used doesn't necessarily match the ligature mark on the neck. So there's all sorts of other things. So it's not just that. It's more, and there you see the alleged ligature. But here, remember, in the tier, there are 8 cells. In that specific tier was supposed to have 2 people, so a maximum of 16 people. We know one of them didn't have a prisoner, and we know that Jeffrey Epstein's, his roommate got moved out, so there was a maximum of 14 in there. Who are these other people, okay? Release their names so they can be interviewed by the family of Jeffrey Epstein. And by the way, if you find out what happened to Jeffrey Epstein, you're really giving some justice to those victims, because why was he killed? What was the reason he was killed? These questions that the victims want to know, and the answer to whether or not Jeffrey Epstein affirmatively committed suicide, killed himself by suicide, died by suicide, or whether he was murdered and this was a hit, will also help the victims know exactly who may have been involved in this whole ring of trafficking.
You're so right. Linda Kenny Baden, always a pleasure. You know how much I adore you and your wonderful husband. Give him our very best, and we'll look forward to talking again soon. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Still to come here on Opening Statements. Here's what we've got.
She was gorgeous inside and out. I never gave up on getting her justice.
That was one of Aliza Sherman's dear friends, Maria Zool. She's joining me live this morning as Aliza's accused killer, and also Aliza's former lawyer, same person, is due in court today. That's coming up. Plus, before we go to break, come to your television set, check this out. We've got newly released body camera footage of Olympic gymnast Mary Lou Retton and her arrest. This video courtesy of Entertainment Tonight. Retton was arrested in May on a DUI charge in West Virginia, and this footage shows her in an apparently distressed state as she's trying to perform field sobriety testing. At one point, the former 5-time Olympian seems to have some trouble breathing and has to get her oxygen, tying the tube to her nose while doing the test, and then she entered a no contest plea in court to a non-aggravated DUI charge. She was hit with a $100 fine.
Don't step off the line. It's going to be heel to toe. Touch your heel to your toe, okay? And I want you to count out loud. I know. Okay, well, let's heel to toe, okay?
2.
Keep your hands down to your side.
5, 6, 7, 8.
I never understood why Aliza's lawyer never made a statement saying, my God, my client was brutally murdered outside my office. My condolences, something. How could he not have said anything? That has always been a red flag for me.
In our spotlight this morning, the latest on the Ohio divorce attorney accused of killing his own client. Defendant Gregory Moore is out after posting a $2 million bond, but he's not required to wear an ankle monitor. That is so far. That could change. He's scheduled to be in court this morning. A judge will hear arguments about that. Now, prosecutors have found an emergency order to require him to wear an ankle monitor, and Moore's attorney is, of course, fighting that. Moore is accused of killing Aliza Sherman. I know you remember her name. She was killed back in 2013. She was found stabbed to death in broad daylight near her attorney's Cleveland office. That's where she was going that morning. He was representing her in his divorce trial that was supposed to start that week. Now, according to prosecutors, he killed her because he was unprepared to try the case and was unlikely going to be given another delay. Let's bring in Aliza Sherman's dear friend, Maria Zoll, and also our attorney guest, Franz Borchardt. Maria, good to see you again. Welcome back on the program.
Thank you.
Could we start with your reaction, please, when you heard the news that this guy had made that big bond?
Well, in some ways I wasn't surprised because just the way things have gone. So it's unbelievable that he did get the bond and without any kind of monitoring. How does someone get arrested for murder and they're let out on a bond and no monitoring system? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's a really high bond to post too. Franz, could I ask you about that, please? Somebody posting that bond, charged with murder, your reaction, please.
So I'm more startled about the absence of some kind of monitoring than the size of the bond and the making the bond. Yes, that's a huge bond. And yes, when someone makes a huge bond, you're kind of like, wait, how did they do that? Are they a flight risk? Can they go? Are they going to actually show up? That all being said, I think an ankle monitor on this guy is a no-brainer, Julie. And I can't imagine, other than the cost associated with the ankle monitoring, I don't understand what the defense's argument against it's going to be. And frankly, I think it's a smart move by the judge to impose this, at least for a period of time, until this defendant shows that he doesn't need one.
I'm with you, Franz. He's got to be monitored prior to trial. He has to be. Maria, we're getting closer to justice, perhaps, for your dear friend, Aliza. What's this like for you? You've gone so many years wearing that beautiful button that you've got on your top. I want everyone to know that you're not just putting that on for today. You've been wearing her button for all these years. You've had signs in your yard all these years. Yes. What's that like now that we have a docket and we have a schedule? I mean, he's going in court today for a pretrial hearing. What's this like for you?
Well, I'm thrilled that we have him under arrest and, that we have this man being charged. It's a big improvement for us. But I think there's such a long road ahead. The trial is not until March 30th. That's difficult. There's, the defense, they're going to present their case. So it's a great beginning we have, but I believe there's a long road ahead.
Sure. Yeah, it can be a very tough road. No, it does. It does make sense. You're getting there. So, Maria, tell me, when this horrible incident happened, Aliza's world was very stressful with her husband. My understanding is at that time it was her husband who was causing her a lot of grief and aggravation and stress, and they were about to start the divorce trial. We know that they have children together. Yeah. And I want to ask you about the kids in a moment. But taking us back in time to that point in time, As her friend, did she ever say anything that gave her a reason to question her divorce lawyer, or anything about him that she didn't like or found weird or suspicious? I'm just curious, were there any red flags? Now, we know hindsight's 20/20, but just wondering if any memories have come up of anything.
Not to me. I think it's possible she said it to someone else, just the way things were going, but not, I don't think in a way that he was harmful. But, you know, she never did say anything to me about that.
Sure.
I always worried about Aliza, always. And
tell us why.
Well, years ago when we met working as nurses, we became friends, and then she got married, and, you know, we went out as couples, but then, you know, things turned not so good after many years. And I don't know, I just worried about her. This may sound weird, but I had a premonition of talking about her death, like that she was going to be murdered. And I don't know, you know, what put that in my head, but except, you know, she had tough times. Wow. And yeah, that just, every time I think about that, though I did not have a premonition that it was going to be a violent death. I thought it was going to be something looking like an accident. That was me. That, I don't know how to even explain this.
Yeah. No, people get them. I mean, yeah. Tell me, Maria, how are Aliza's children doing? I know you're in touch with them, right?
Yeah, I haven't been in touch with them recently. I think that this is very, very emotional for them to go down to court and, you know, have to rehash things, to see this man being let out without any kind of monitoring system. I think this is extremely difficult. It's been a tough 12 years, and they've tried to maintain a relatively normal life the best they could, but it's not easy. Their mom was, you know, they were very close to their mom. She was a wonderful person, and this is it's just very difficult.
I'm sure. Our hearts go out to her kids and to you, one of Aliza's dear friends. And I know we'll continue the conversation. Like I told you last time, Maria, we will certainly continue following this case. Want to hear things from your perspective, having known her so well and been such a great crusader for justice for her. I know this has rocked the city of Cleveland. This is a case that's been talked about for a long, long time, and we're going to be talking about it much more as this one progresses through the system. Maria Zoll, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Every good wish as you continue the advocacy for Aliza Sherman. When we come back, we're talking about Kaylee Gonsalves's family. Have you heard that they're now returning thousands of dollars in donations after Brian Kohberger's plea deal? We'll talk more about what we can expect from the victims' families at sentencing.
A man found shot in the face after his wife reportedly said that she wanted him dead.
Could her own words end up sealing her fate?
That smoking gun could not stay hidden forever.
The Widow's Words murder trial. Live coverage today on Court TV. This week.
Getting you ready for the day's testimony in the Widow's Words murder trial. Plus, the latest developments in the biggest cases from across the country.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Now for what's tipping the scales of justice, Kaylee Gonsalves's family raising over $85,000 on GoFundMe so that they could attend Brian Kohberger's trial. But now that there's a plea deal in place and no trial is happening, Kaylee's dad, Steve Gonsalves, told TMZ that they're offering refunds. But some donors just want the family to keep the money because they're so upset about the plea deal. So as we're looking ahead to Brian Kohberger's sentencing on July 23rd, so it could happen soon, we're asking, what can we expect to hear from the victims' families? Let's bring back in our legal eagles, Casey Early and Franz Borghardt. Oh, this is going to be really tough. For anybody wondering how this is going to go, let's talk about that and what you both are envisioning for the impact statements and what we can expect at this time. That's going to be right around the corner, about 2 weeks out. Kesia, your thoughts first, please.
Well, one can only expect that this is going to be a very emotional day because we know that the parties were split in whether or not they wanted him to have a plea deal or a lengthy trial and possibly a death sentence. So it's going to be emotional. And I don't like to say that this is the healing or the end of the healing because we know that it's a lifetime of healing. But unfortunately, in this case, the father did not get what he wanted. He wanted a lengthy trial. He was very vocal. He said that, you know, Kohberger wasn't afraid to kill, but now he's afraid to die. So it's unfortunate that this is the way that it has to go. But thankfully for this family, his morals have prevailed. I mean, they did explain that they're going to return the $85,000. This was collected because they were anticipating a lengthy trial, but they're going to return it because they don't want to fool the public and they want to just move forward.
Yeah, such good people. Casey, thank you for that. Franz, your thoughts. What are you envisioning when this day rolls around?
So it's important for people to remember that victim impact statements are an opportunity for the victims, the survivors, to address the court. It's not really supposed to be directed at the accused. It's not supposed to be directed towards the state, although I think in this one, we'll have some pretty raw emotional comments directed towards the defendant as well as the state, possibly. But, you know, the sentence is a foregone conclusion at this point. So really, the only thing that he can do and has to do is just sit there and listen. Sometimes defendants don't do that, but I think he's shown that he can almost be stoic to the degree of not really seeming to care about being there or what's being said. So, but I think it's going to be pretty raw, Julie, and I think that we're going to hear some cross things said about the prosecution and to the prosecution about this. I am very proud of the family to offer that in so much as they're offering the money back, and I think that that's a definite sign that they are not, this is about justice for them and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Right. You well said, Franz. Yeah, in terms of the criticism of the prosecution, I'm not surprised that they feel this way. I don't blame them for feeling that way. I get it. Steve Gonsalves, I keep thinking of the word they use. They called the prosecution bumbling, you know, and I get why they feel that way because all this time passed. I often wonder, Casey, let me ask you if they might feel differently if this plea deal was struck early on, just to get this guy locked up, put it behind them. You know, I wonder if some of the upset was because of so many months of worry and kind of getting prepared mentally to go through the trial.
I think that, Julie, but also how quickly they scheduled the plea deal, right? Or the hearing. There was just little to no notice. And although the judge in this case kind of explained why it had to happen so quickly, because if he did not go through with the deal, at least it can continue with the trial and not have any further delay. I just feel like an explanation and communication goes a long way. Oftentimes as litigators, we do this day in, day out, and we don't tend to understand that our clients or the victims don't understand the process. So I really believe if the prosecutors even, I think it was their duty to explain to them, why is this plea hearing happening so quickly? Why is it happening at all against our wishes? Sometimes an explanation can make someone feel a little better. Maybe the prosecution believe, you know what, we may not get a conviction or whatever the case may be. So explanation and communication.
Yes, well said. Kesia Early, Franz Borgard. We love having you both on the show.